A massive alien mothership emerged from outer space. It suddenly stopped over the city skyline. No one knew what it held inside. For 3 months, the ship hovered motionless in the sky. To uncover the truth, after careful deliberation, humans decided to approach it via helicopter. The only way inside was to break the door open. For the first time in human history, contact with aliens was made. The entire world turned its attention to the event. But upon entering the ship, everyone was shocked. Inside were weak, malnourished creatures that resembled lobsters. The locals nicknamed them prawn people. What was even more surprising was that these aliens, once believed to be powerful and advanced, looked as miserable as refugees fleeing war. To help these unfortunate beings, local authorities formed a support team. They began transporting the prawn people off the spaceship and setting up temporary shelters. But later, they regretted their decision. Unexpectedly, despite the spaceship's seemingly small size, it housed millions of individuals. But the damage was done. Under global pressure, they had to accept the reality and gathered the aliens into a segregated area. The area was heavily guarded, with military personnel stationed in strict access controls. This area was called District 9. Over time, District 9 * quickly turned into a slum. A few years later, the prawn people living there began to reproduce. Before long, their population grew from 1 million to 1.8 million. As they coexisted with humans, many prawn people began treating illegal activities as entertainment, causing chaos everywhere. Eventually, one day, humans could no longer tolerate them. They took to the streets in protest, demanding the government send the creatures back into space. Some even used the term prawn people to describe the aliens. They were seen as an inferior species. The reason was that the larger prawns often scavenged at landfills for work. To ease tensions, the local government began to intervene. They decided to relocate District 9 to an uninhabited area 200 kilometers away. To carry out this large-scale prawn eviction, the government hired a multinational company called Greer, specializing in alien-related matters. To complete the challenging mission, they were prepared to use force. The prawn eviction began. Wikus was assigned to oversee operations in case of danger. Meanwhile, District 9 housed a gang of criminals, refugees from other places. This group knew that the prawns could create alien weapons, and had a particular fondness for cat food. Thus, they used canned cat food to trade with the prawns. However, the prawns were not easily deceived. Alien weapons could only function with their fingerprints, making them nothing more than piles of scrap metal. The gang leader, after losing both legs, realized that prawn bodies held great value for humans. Not only did they have healing properties, but consuming them could extend one's lifespan. In such a context, the mass eviction of prawns was far from straightforward. When Wikus arrived at District 9, he began knocking on doors, demanding that residents sign demolition agreements. If refused, he would try to bribe them with canned cat food. If that failed, he resorted to violence. However, the prawns were not entirely defenseless. 2 prawns in armored suits were searching through rubble for a specific liquid to power the spaceship. Suddenly, a young prawn found the necessary device. They brought the device to a secret laboratory. Through multiple layers of refinement, they extracted a single drop of essence. With this essence, they could power the spaceship and leave Earth. But just then, Wikus appeared at the door. Hong Ma hurriedly handed the essence to Golden Armor, and instructed him to ensure that no outsiders discovered it. "I need to go home to find my son first." After that, the Golden Armor was caught immediately after opening the door. Wikus entered the room, but he discovered there was a barrier here. Yet, the moment it opened, it surprised him. There was also a laboratory here. By chance, he unearthed a liquid hidden in a box. Wikus thought it was a weapon. He casually turned it. Suddenly, a stream of black liquid sprayed out. Facing the camera, he pretended to stay calm. But he didn't know the harmful effects of this liquid. Ignoring his colleagues' warnings, he continued working by himself. Not long after, he got in the car. Suddenly, he felt dizzy. At first, Wikus thought it was because he hadn't eaten breakfast. But while everyone was eating, black blood began to flow from his nose. Wikus was shocked to see it. Even worse, his fingernails also started falling off for no reason. First, he finished his work, then hurried to the bathroom. But the next moment, Wikus anxiously rushed home. But his family gave him a surprise. It turned out they were celebrating his promotion and raise. When Wikus was about to cut the cake, an accident happened. Just as he held the knife, black liquid spewed out of his mouth. Soon after, Wikus was taken to the hospital. Unexpectedly, when the doctor removed the bandage from his hand, they were shocked to find his palm had begun to mutate. The doctor reassured him, and then called the police. They quickly put the mutated Wikus into a containment unit. Then he was sent to a secret laboratory. There, they began examining Wikus' body. It turned out he had been assimilated by aliens. The strange thing was, He still retained his consciousness. As he walked down a corridor, Wikus was startled to see there were prawn corpses everywhere. That's when he realized the company was conducting research on alien prawns. Because they wanted to learn how to use alien weapons, they captured Wikus just to experiment on him. Shortly after, he was taken to a shooting range. Right in front of him was an alien weapon created by the shrimp people. They forced Wikus to pull the trigger of the laser gun. They even used live shrimp people as targets. In doing so, he was compelled to destroy a life. After seeing the power of the laser gun, his superiors decided to proceed with dissecting his body. As the doctor prepared for surgery, his instinct for survival was instantly triggered. He quickly stood up and counterattacked. He escaped before the security team arrived. The person in charge immediately ordered a manhunt. From their perspective, Wikus was no longer an ordinary person. He had become a billion-dollar asset. To capture him, even the news began broadcasting, talking about Wikus and the aliens. They fabricated a story about him. They claimed that he was in this state because he had slept with the shrimp people. They announced a reward for anyone who could provide clues, with an incredibly generous payout. And so, Wikus became the center of national attention. In desperation, he fled everywhere. Eventually, he could only seek refuge in District 9. He spent a night in a shrimp people's house. 40 hours after the manhunt began, Wikus woke up feeling hungry. He then lined up with the shrimp people to buy food from the meat vendors there. Facing all kinds of ridicule, he barely managed to buy a can of cat food. Then he began devouring it. But at that moment, Wikus suddenly felt something was wrong while eating. He spat out the cat food and discovered that his teeth had started falling out. Before he could figure out what was happening, his wife called on the phone. She said she couldn't accept her husband spending the night with the shrimp people. Just as Wikus was about to explain, the phone suddenly died. He hated the Greer company and his own deformed arm. To prevent his wife from misunderstanding, he took an axe to cut off his large arm. But in the end, he couldn't bring himself to do it. So, he tried to cut off one of his fingers first. After the attempt, an intense pain immediately filled his heart. A helicopter that happened to be chasing him arrived. Wikus immediately ran away. He accidentally broke into Hong Ma's house and asked him to save him, not to let the outsiders capture him. Before he could finish his words, Wikus fainted from blood loss. At this point, the prawn arm was exposed. When Hong Ma saw it, he realized it was related to the lost fluid. He hurriedly pulled him into a secret room. When Wikus woke up, he found himself in an airplane cabin. From Hong Ma's words, he learned that the reason he had changed was all due to that fluid, and the fluid was the fuel for the spaceship. With the fuel, they could return to the mothership. Hong Ma told Wikus that if they could return to the mothership, it could heal his genes. Wikus was happy to hear that. Unfortunately, the fuel had been left behind in the lab. Now, they had to risk retrieving the fluid. Looking at the assimilated arm, the two of them said, "Let's do it." The next day, Wikus went to the black market. He was planning to buy some alien weapons from the mafia, but he didn't have enough money. At that moment, the mafia boss noticed his arm, because he had always wished for such an arm, so he could operate the alien weapons he had bought. All he needed was to consume him to obtain the prawn's genes. Wikus felt uncomfortable hearing this. Just as the boss's brother was about to make a move, Wikus accidentally touched a laser gun. He then pulled the trigger. In just a few seconds, the entire place was wiped out. Afterward, he kidnapped the mafia boss and took many alien weapons. Meanwhile, Greer's people were discussing how to capture Wikus. They didn't expect him to come to them first. The two of them first blew up the company door. Then, they used the chaos to infiltrate the lab. Everyone had not anticipated this. The two of them then went all the way through. Finally, they found the fluid. But just as they were about to escape, Hong Ma suddenly saw the corpse of his kind. Wikus felt something was wrong. So, he kept urging Hong Ma beside him to take him out of there. Right after that, a group of guards arrived. The others used all their firepower, and Wikus fired back. But if this continued, both of them would definitely die. In desperation, he cried out again in pain, calling for Hong Ma. After hearing Wikus mention his son, he immediately reacted. Under Wikus' protection, Hong Ma quickly made a time bomb. He then blew up the lab's door. The two of them barely escaped with their lives. Afterward, Greer's people quickly chased after them. They ran to District 9. Just as Hong Ma was about to start the spacecraft, Wikus asked a question. How long would it take to heal himself? Hong Ma answered, at least 3 years. But he couldn't help Wikus right now, because he saw his kind become experimental subjects. He really couldn't bear it. He could only quickly return to the planet to find assistance, and then come back to heal Wikus. But he didn't want to wait any longer. He had to forcefully knock Hong Ma out. Then, he rushed into the cockpit. Not long after, Greer's people arrived. Hong Ma was captured. When Wikus reached the cockpit, under his clumsy operation, the alien spacecraft took off into the sky. It flew straight toward the alien mothership. But at this moment, Greer's people tried to stop the spacecraft from taking off. They directly used missiles. The spacecraft's engine was immediately destroyed. It quickly fell from midair. Hong Ma, after seeing this, was completely despairing. Without the ship, he couldn't return to the mothership. The two of them were quickly captured. As they were about to be taken back to the camp, the District 9 boss sent people to stop them, because he also wanted Wigs. The two sides directly clashed, but the boss had many people. Greer's army, seeing they couldn't resist, hurriedly called for reinforcements. But the District 9 boss didn't back down. Soon, they took Wigs away. At this moment, Hong Ma's son, Little Shrimp, arrived at the spacecraft, and successfully connected with the mothership. He activated all the alien weapons on the ground. After that, Greer's reinforcements arrived. The two sides met again. Wigs was caught by the boss. At the critical moment, when Wigs was about to lose his arm, suddenly the giant armor reacted. It quickly focused on everyone in the room. The next second, everyone finally reacted. Then they immediately counterattacked. But against the alien technology, they were immediately defeated. Even the boss died at his hands. When the gun was pointed at Wigs, the armor suddenly stopped and opened its equipment compartment. It seemed to be welcoming Wigs. The mothership in the sky received the signal. It began to slowly move toward District 9. After Green's people saw this, they began to interrogate Hong Ma immediately, because he was the only one who knew who controlled the mothership. At the critical moment, Wigs climbed into the armor. He controlled the alien weapon to rescue them. But when he encountered them, he was frightened and fled. Soon after, Wigs stopped when he heard the message that they wanted to kill Hong Ma. After thinking carefully, they had once gone through hardship together. So, Wigs turned back again. The alien armor was indeed very powerful. A laser beam instantly killed 4 of them. Then Wigs escaped with Hong Ma. The mercenaries knew the robot was very powerful. Normal weapons couldn't harm it, so they used heavy guns. Under the pressure of close-range fire, Wigs couldn't hold on anymore. He then told Hong Ma's family, "I can't escape here. I hope you take your son back to the mothership." He said he would definitely stop them. Hong Ma promised him for 3 years, saying he would definitely come back again. Wait for him for 3 years. Then Wigs tried to fight back. Mercenaries died everywhere. Under Wigs' protection, Hong Ma's family finally boarded the spacecraft. After a series of maneuvers, the bottom of the mothership emitted a blinding blue light. It quickly began to pull the damaged spacecraft up. Wigs, fighting desperately underground. At this moment, the bald man raised a rocket and aimed at the spacecraft. But as soon as he launched it, Wigs caught it. Then his whole arm was blown off. As he stood up, preparing to counterattack, he was immediately hit by a truck. At this point, the robot lost its combat ability. He was finally captured by the mercenaries. Wigs opened the door and crawled out. He crawled out from inside the armor. Seeing the spacecraft had successfully entered the mothership, he finally felt relieved. Then Wigs was captured. When the bald man was about to kill him, a group of shrimp people jumped out from nearby. Without saying a word, they directly tore him apart. Wigs finally escaped. He looked up at the ship about to take off, hoping that Hong Ma's family could quickly return and heal him. Soon after, the entire city saw this 30-year-old spacecraft flying into space. Wigs cried as he watched, knowing that next, he would completely become a shrimp person. But he did not regret it, because he believed that Hong Ma's family would definitely return on time. But when that time would come was unknown. Soon after, a refugee zone was established. The shrimp population grew to 2.5 million people. At this moment, in a junkyard, a shrimp person dressed like a human was fiddling with a metal flower made of iron. He wanted to give it to his ex-wife. This is the end of the film. Goodbye and see you again.